All right, so next up, we have a conversation with Al Taylor, Assembly member in Assembly District 71.
Hi, one and all. Welcome to Silicon Harlem's annual Next Gen Techs Conference. I am so honored to be here once again, not only as a public servant from Harlem, but as a big supporter of technology and its potential to transform our lives for the better. The technological advancements we've seen over the past few decades have been nothing short of incredible. Technology has revolutionized nearly every aspect of our daily lives, from the way we communicate to medical care to our global economy. The technological revolution we are witnessing today has the potential to make a positive impact and offer new and exciting opportunities to so many. However, in order for technology to live up to its promise, we must first close the digital gap that exists in our city, in our country, and around the globe. In April 2020, over 500,000 households in New York City had no internet access, presenting a major challenge as digital spaces became more and more necessary for everything from conducting our everyday activities to meeting our basic needs. The COVID-19 pandemic has made the digital divide more apparent than ever. Before, as hundreds and thousands of New Yorkers were required to stay, learn, and work from home, when stay-at-home orders were put into effect, families experiencing economic and food insecurity now needed to go online to access programs like food stamps, public assistance, and unemployment benefits. Many healthcare services were able to shift to virtual telehealth platforms, while public school systems transitioned to remote learning, as well as private schools. Critical financial resources like the emergency rental relief application you have to do online. None of this was possible if you didn't already have internet access or access to an internet accessible device. Without internet access or access to public resources like the libraries or our city's most vulnerable populations were unable to get the financial, the food, and the support and education tools and health services they needed in the time of our city's greatest crisis. The internet has also become an essential tool for accessing critical health and safety updates. It even helps us to reach out to our colleagues and our loved ones to ensure we're still connected, even from a distance, to the people who matter to us the most. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed so many vulnerabilities in our system, placing incredible burdens on already distressed communities and groups, including our seniors and homeless. In 2020, I personally delivered thousands of meals to seniors in need and heard firsthand how they struggle to reach essential services or updates without internet access or digital literacy. My office and many other elected offices had to adjust to how we serve our communities through balancing the needs of our constituents while observing public health and safety protocols. That's why I'm deeply grateful for the innovative groups like Silicon Harlem, who understands the problems we're facing and are dedicated to fixing it through broadband advocacy, education, and more. Technology can serve as a vehicle for social change, bridging long-standing social and economic barriers and helping us to pave the way for a more just and equitable future. That's one major reason why Mayor de Blasio pronounced in March that the city is seeking $150 million into modern, innovative, equitable broadband infrastructure for universal broadband. We know we need more money. We know that this is the future and we know that this is where we're headed, but we have to make the needed investments now so we can ensure it's a future where all of us can reap the benefits, not only a select few. That means investing in our infrastructure and investing in our people to ensure they know how to use technological tools and even leverage this knowledge into jobs and cutting edge industries. I have always been committed to narrowing the digital gap and tackling digital inequality in our city and throughout New York State. I urge my colleagues in government to do the same. As the pandemic showed and continues to show us, the digital inequality crisis we face is urgent, and we must narrow the gap in our help in our communities and not only survive but strive. When I visited Asia, I got a glimpse of what the future could look like. And I'm telling you, we cannot afford to fall behind. We have some of the best and brightest minds ever right here in America. And we know we've got the resources. Now is the time to see the thing through. When we come together with technology and increased digital literacy, we rise together, empowered and ready to tackle the problems of tomorrow. I look forward to hearing from the esteemed speakers who are here today to tell us about the future we look forward to. We are in this together. Thank you all. Enjoy the conference.
Thank you, Al. Thank you so much. Let's go to the next speaker, which last year we had Dr. Vint Cerf join us and talked a lot about, certainly the pandemic issues that we were all facing. But if you don't know, he's one of the inventors of the Internet.
Hello, my name is Vint Cerf. I'm Google's chief Internet evangelist, and I want to thank Clayton Banks for giving me an opportunity to greet my friends at the Silicon Harlem. I apologize that I can't join you in person because it turns out the Marconi Society, which I chair, is having its annual symposium on October 22nd, the same day that you're meeting. But Clayton gave me an opportunity to chat a little bit more about the topic you've chosen this year, which is essentially beyond connectivity. What do we have to do besides connecting people to make the Internet and its associated technologies useful for everyone? This is exactly the same topic that the Marconi Society has been asking itself and its members as well. So this is a very timely question for you to raise. First observation I would make is that what we're looking for is safety and security and privacy, reliability, utility, accessibility in multiple senses, including ones where accommodations might be needed for people with disabilities. There's quite a long list of things that extend well beyond just getting connected to the Internet in order to make it useful. Think about content that's locally appropriate and usable. What about languages? What about having information in a form that you can readily absorb? Those are things that require serious investment, serious thought, and a good deal of effort. So all of that should be included, I think, in your conversations and discussions, and I hope that you'll take the time to organize your thoughts, provide the feedback to Clayton and to me especially, so I can bring that to the Marconi Society and my colleagues there in order to reinforce the message that there's more to Internet than connectivity. I think that you would also help us a great deal if you could say a little more about the state of access where you are. One of the things that the Marconi Society has been working on is collecting data that will tell us where is the Internet, where is it not. If it's present, is it present in adequate capacity in order to be useful? Is it affordable? Is it reliable? And measurement will tell us that. So there's work going on between the Marconi Society and the Measurement Lab, which is housed in the Code for Science and Society and Google, in order to capture additional data, not just domestically in the U.S., but on a on a global on a global scale. So there's another area where you could be very helpful. What's actually happening where you are? What do we know about the Internet, its cost, its reliability, the speeds that are available, the applications that are working for people? Where are things not working? What applications are missing that would be helpful? Are there things that would stimulate business opportunities, for example, perhaps remote work in this time of pandemic? And even absent the pandemic, once we get through all that, the ability to work remotely may turn out to be a very important tool. Think also about what the pandemic has taught us, and that's remote medicine. A great many doctors are saying, please, do a video conference, don't come into the office. That, by the way, is going to drive the need for remote sensing devices, things that will help a doctor diagnose our conditions. So we'll need devices that can read our blood pressure and pulse oxygen levels and our heart rates and a number of other physiological phenomena, which normally we'd have to go into the doctor's office to supply. But if there's a way to do that remotely, then remote medicine and remote medical care may actually become more of a reality than it has been in the past. That too would be a very important outcome. So I'm looking forward to hearing the consequences of your meeting on October 22nd, and of course an opportunity to see you face to face in person in New York City when time permits. Meanwhile, I'll see you on the net.
Greetings, I'm Congressman Adriano Espaillat, proudly representing New York's 13th Congressional District. Under the leadership and direction of Clayton Banks, Silicon Harlem continues to provide an incredible service to our community through its commitment to building a pipeline of young students, recent graduates, and trained professionals to enter our nation's most innovative workforce. Congratulations on your upcoming Next Gen Virtual Tech Summit. Technology connects each of us, and together we have an opportunity to make the difference in the industry to ensure our city and nation remain competitive around the world. Thank you for your efforts and keep the faith.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Levine, City Council member from here uptown, Chair of the City Council's Health Committee, and Democratic nominee to be the next Manhattan Borough President. And I want to congratulate Silicon Harlem on the 8th annual Next Gen Tech Conference. We need you more than ever to tackle the tremendous inequality in access to the internet. We've seen over this difficult pandemic year and a half, the high cost of lack of access to the internet at a time when so much of our life is moving to the virtual world, whether it's employment opportunities, social gatherings, political activity. More and more of it's happening virtually thanks to this difficult pandemic time. And that's going to continue. That makes it more urgent than ever that we ensure that every single New Yorker has access to high-speed internet at home, mobilely, and everywhere. And so the work of Silicon Harlem remains more important than ever. Thank you for the work you do. Congrats on this conference, and I wish you much more success. All the best.
So let me first introduce the leader of NYCHA and, of course, one of the people I admire. This is Greg Ross, and I'll ask him, Greg, if you don't mind, introduce yourself and tell a little bit about who you are.
Great, thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and I really appreciate the opportunity. We have this enormous problem in front of us, we've been trying to solve for the betterment of people's lives. I'm coming at this after a long career in public housing. I worked at my first housing authority in 1973. In 1973, there was only public housing. We didn't even have some of the programs that we had today. So I've sort of worked my way through the scale of public housing over the years, spent time at HUD, spent time in other cities with the same goal. How do we preserve these units? We can't preserve them. How do we replace them and return them to the families, as some of the other city strategies had to go that route? And here, how do we keep our units? How do we reinvest in them? And by reinvesting in the property, also reinvesting in the families. Because I think one of the things that brings is opportunities, not just to make your apartment better, but maybe to give some options that you didn't have, before all that investment showed up. So very exciting, very challenging. Can't be anything but sober about this work, and appreciate the opportunity to be here and try out some of this.
Well, when you think about those opening remarks, which I very much agree with everything you're saying, what I've learned from you is that why not put a blueprint up together, right? and it reflects, I think, a lot of what you just said, and certainly what I've read about, how you've talked about this to so many. So there's a lot of people on this call who are very interested in sort of the blueprint for change. Sure. And I would love it if you could just share a little bit about that, and
Sure.
We'll talk a little bit more about it as we go.
Contrary to a lot of folks have said, oh, this is going to privatize NYCHA, or this is going to diminish resident opportunity or rights. We're very, very careful to make sure that neither one of those things happens. Basically, what the blueprint does is take advantage of how the federal law works. When you transfer a particular unit of public housing to another entity, in this case, a public housing trust, which is itself a public entity, a public agency that would be created under state law, you trigger eligibility for what's called the tenant protection voucher. In other words, you're changing the subsidy from one type to another. The reason for that change is each voucher, if we went the blueprint route, it's worth $650 a month more than what we get now. And that's for every unit that we would do that.
Wow.
So when we designed the blueprint, this was prior, though, to the conversations that are going on in Washington now. I want to be clear that when we were in the thick of it, we didn't have an administration or didn't have the momentum that's down there now. So the idea was to use that mechanism, public to public transfer, to raise the capital using that extra $650 and put that back into the buildings. In the same vein, the blueprint provided for full resident protections, continuation of things like the Section 3 hiring programs, full resident participation, all the rights of the resident councils, that citywide groups, they're all protected. And we asked for some procurement relief because we'd be investing in properties at an enormous scale. Our first, if you ranked our properties based on some criteria you need, first 4 properties alone are $2.2 billion.
Wow.
Yeah. So we'd be raising money at a huge scale. Now, the Washington conversation actually dovetails really nicely into that. I don't know what we'll get from there. I mean, I know our delegation is fighting to keep the capital in the reconciliation bill. Very hopeful. So we'll be watching that carefully as well, in addition to the plans we've laid out already.
When you talk about 4 campuses that could be $2 billion, how big is NYCHA? I mean, I've heard statistics from all over the place.
Yeah.
And I've been in a lot of the NYCHA locations. But in general, how big is it, and like compared to a state of New York of America?
Well, if we took and I'll give my boroughs, if we took either just the units in Manhattan or Brooklyn, they would become the second largest housing authority in the country.
Wow!
Just one of them.
Wow!
And in fact, when you add us together at around 174,000, including the sites that we've done the rental assistance demonstration on, you got to go 12 more housing authorities to add up to that. So it is on a completely different scale. And the other thing, which is kind of unique to New York, there's 2 parts of this. First, these properties were actually built as towers in the park. It was a very popular planning idea, and New York actually executed on it. I was up at St. Nicholas houses this morning, and
I was there yesterday.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day today, and you're looking right. You have plenty of open space. So it's built in all the boroughs. So New York is both big in terms of numbers, but also big in geography, because the open space requires care. The distance across our city requires thinking about that too. So those are there's the big numbers in a big area to cover.
Well, there's a lot of buildings on these campuses. I mean, St. Nicholas, 13, 14 buildings,
right?
Very high, 14, 15 stories. I mean, it's significant. And by the way, I hope everyone's got like pen and paper, because Greg Ross is dropping some serious information here. So please take notes. And again, ask your questions, opinions, anything in the chat, because we're getting more information I think I've ever had about NYCHA right now. So we want to take full advantage of it. Let's talk a little bit about beyond the infrastructure of NYCHA. You were mentioning that in your opening remarks. This does go down to people. How do we actually look at people? And one of the things that I think that I've read about what you've envisioned, and certainly I'm aligned with that when it comes to education and workforce development, skilling, and all those type of things. where we as a city are accelerating in so many ways. We want to become much more of a smart city, for example. We want to have much more opportunities for people in the city. And oftentimes, those who live within the NYCHA are getting that information late in the game.
Right.
So talk a little bit beyond the infrastructure of the buildings. We'll get back to that at some point, and more about the people.
So let's think about it this way. I think everyone has talked about the crisis we've been enduring with COVID, the necessity to connect. So part of the infrastructure would be, of course, to wire or create an environment so that the aggressive rollout of the internet connectivity can continue. And I mention that because that's a job. Someone somewhere is going to have to maintain that. And that's a job we could teach the next generation. And we have all generations in public housing in New York. But if we think about it, what are we going to, I have teenage kids, and my thinking is, what are they going to need to learn to, be up and at it in the next wave? And that's one of them. The capital investment brings new technologies, new systems. They're going to need maintenance. So, and I'm not talking about just like, sort of entry level. You can come in there, but now you also have the potential to rise above that. You can take some steps up the ladder. Mm-hmm. That's what the investment in families. It has to be, can we create more opportunity for adults and children who want to get into the workforce? I think we can. Education connections by making the apartments more livable and safe. That allows you to take some of your energy out of the difficulties we have now and put it into other parts of your life. And then the third thing is health. We be very much, as we do these investments, trying to think about, is there anybody that wants to partner with us on bringing either health services or counseling closer to these families? We have a lot of clinics, a lot of things in New York, no question. But some of the sites are so big, they become their own neighborhoods. And if we're going to do the building over, shouldn't we make some space where, maybe you could go to a unit, get some counseling on an issue you've been unable to talk to someone before. Maybe there's a nurse practitioner there. Maybe there's options that connect you with the people you need to live a better or healthier life. So those are all things that are possible because you make the buildings livable. And at the same time, you can make the opportunity available to families.
I appreciate that because it does really come down to people.
It does, yes.
And one of the things that I've learned over time is when I did have some time with President Clinton, one of his quotes was, "Intelligence is distributed everywhere evenly, but access and exposure is not."
Yeah, that's very true.
That is so true.
Yes.
Because I've actually taught many kids in public housing, particularly St. Nicholas. We taught one particular curriculum around just coding.
Right.
And the kids built a website for St. Nicholas. The first time that the own people that live there actually built their own website, still up to this day. And so I'm very proud that you are now starting to focus, not now, but you've always had a focus on the people, which is very important. Talk a little bit about, let's just get back for a moment. You mentioned something which is my favorite subject, which is why not, make sure everyone's connected. Why don't we have this, this opportunity to take advantage of the infrastructure bill and really figure out how to do this. And selfishly, Silicon Harlem has been preaching this for some time. And one of the things we do have is what's called a network technician curriculum.
Right.
To your point about future jobs. Yeah. We saw that coming. And literally, I think it was a couple of days ago, right out of St. Nicholas, a senior citizen wants to join as a network technician. So we're bringing them into the curriculum.
That's great.
We have to have more women than men that are joining in on this curriculum. Yeah. So we're seeing exactly your vision happening in real time right now. And I've been saying that across New York City, network technicians are a good job, and they can, go into other parts of a career in telecommunications. So when you think about that kind of stuff, you talk about partners and collaborations. How does that work for you? Is there a way that happens, just for those who are on the call?
Sure. Well, we have a big push by the city to get the buildings wired. That has been very helpful. We're trying to be open and collaborative with the different vendors that have been selected to do that, because they are bringing something to the community that's sort of now fundamental. The other thing we're doing, we've taken a look at how HUD defines utilities. And we think that we have a lot of assistance now through the sort of CARES and the COVID stuff, but that may be for a year or two. But what we want to do is change the definition of the utility to include the internet access portion of this. And what that would allow is you could create a utility allowance structure so that no matter whether there's emergency funds now, if the utility definition is changed, there would be a portion of that that you could get reimbursed for as part of the utility mechanism that HUD has for like lighting, gas, and water, and that kind of thing. Electricity. So I think that's an adaptation we're going to press for in the near term. And once some of these emergency plans and things run out, you'd still be able to get some way of making sure your access is affordable, because cost is a factor. And to your other point, these buildings are not, when we're done, they're going to be wired a different way. They're either going to be on Wi-Fi, just like the utility companies now. Well, you can buy a window air conditioner that they've got Wi-Fi connection to. Again, someone has to know how to install that and maintain that system. And that's going to be true with everything from whether it's a boiler plant or elevator. These technologies are really good examples of the Internet of Things applied to a public housing building. And I think there's tremendous potential for our families. The other thing I would say is there's also potential to, if we can do it, we would be investing in these buildings at such a scale that we could assemble things that we need here in New York City. You could do bathroom kits or kitchen kits or cabinets, or these could be manufacturing jobs that, and even given the supply chain issues we have now, what if that supply chain was just in Brooklyn? So, these are potential ways that people can get access to a new economy that I think this capital will bring.
Wow. Now that is inspiring, just to know some of the opportunities that are here. And certainly the denominator is connectivity. And one of the things we've been trying to push through the CTO's office, et cetera, is let's put a nice big pipe and just put everything down there.
Yes.
Whatever happens connects up to that. This is one of my favorite topics about broadband and connectivity.
Sure.
I'm sure you know that we're doing some of the work as well.
Right.
And so I would love to have another conversation about that specifically, even tour together, because I'll show you some infrastructure in your building that have been ignored.
That would be great. I'd love to. We could
there's
set a time and
we should do that.
Yeah.
So, but what I want to do is just pivot a little bit is there going to be more? Is there a need for more housing in New York City? Is there a need for less housing? Like, how's that moving?
It definitely more. Part of it, I think, if you look at NYCHA's numbers, we were talking about the size of this. You get different counts of how many families actually live there, depending on whether families are doubled up. Well, the doubled up family situation is a compromise at best, even on a good day. So, just counting what we think might be the informal numbers suggests that we could easily need another 100,000 units. Wow. There's just a high demand for both physical housing. We have 86,000 housing vouchers. We lease all of those. There are probably some places in the city that we could put more vouchers in place if we had the funding. I know the president's bill, his regular budget, and some of these other bills include more vouchers. What public housing is doing is saying, okay, here's a foundation of units that we can preserve and keep. But that does not mean we should not be thinking about building beyond that. And what's been missing is sort of like the combination of locations and financial tools to really do that in a way that would begin to scale up to that number. Because there's just tremendous need out there.
Well, the comment on broadband, one of the great consulting companies did all this research and found that if you go from zero broadband to just a broadband connection at the speeds of the FCC, you increase the revenue in your household by $500 a month.
Wow, yeah, that's great.
You picked up a skill now, you can find a job, all this
Yeah.
stuff. So it's a significant thing in it. And it makes me ask this question, which is, my last question is going to be, so this is the second to the last question.
Okay, all right.
Last question is going to be even more profound. My question is, actually maybe it's combined. So my question is, what is the measure of success? Part of that is it to get out of NYCHA? Is it something else? I'm just curious how you may look at it.
So I think one of the things that we have to think about public housing is what is the gap between I'm in public housing and I want to be in a private unit. I had this situation in another housing authority I worked. Ironically, I had a property here and units available on the other side. I realized that the families, even the higher earning families that are in public housing, who tend to have like multiple jobs, could not put the capital together to make the jump. Wow. And I think that's really true here. It's really hard to make the jump. So the expectation that, maybe public housing was founded with in 1937, that it would be, you'd be traveling through it.
Right.
That's hard to do unless you have a landing spot on the other side that's affordable. Right. And that is a chain that's really broken.
Wow.
Because we have some multiple wage earning families. These families are doing the right thing. Not only are the parents working, but so are the kids. Yet, even with that income in that household, I doubt they could pull together without assistance of some kind to make the leap even into a private rental and ownership is an even farther reach. Very desirable, but there needs to be a bridge of some kind. I don't know that we fully thought out what that should look like. I know the city has some programs that work in that way, but that's a big thing because in that model, if we had families graduating, you would free up units for other families. But that's a very tough order because of the financial leap that's required to either secure a rental or ownership opportunity.
It begs another question before I get my last one. So which is financial literacy.
Yes.
Is that a role NYCHA has any desire to get involved in, just to help provide, some more literacy around money and things of that nature?
Absolutely. Our resident engagement services group, we have many partners across the city. Some of them are doing and providing that. I'd like to make that more available if we can over time. There are a lot of groups that are working on that kind of thing. We have our in the Section 8 program, we have our Family Self-Sufficiency Program. That's another program where families can earn and save and graduate with a savings nest egg. We want to bring that to public housing as well. And we want to bring that kind of counseling too, so that, over time, families can understand the budget and costs and think about what that means. But that would be definitely something we would support.
I think that's important. And like I said, like you said, essentially, there is that opportunity to open up more spaces as we have more success with the homes. And I look forward to being a part of that solution versus just sitting here and talking about problems. So I really appreciate what you're saying. We're going to start wrapping up a little bit, but I have a final question. But before I do that, do you have anything you want to sort of mention you got people on this call, a lot of them are techies.
Right.
So if there's any tech you want to talk about that you might need, 1, 2, there's a lot of people on here that actually live in NYCHA.
Sure. No, that's good. So
anything you want to talk about?
I would just say that when we invest in these properties, we're looking to change the energy profile of these sites. And well, what does that mean? I mean, we could be generating heat in a different way. We could be generating hot water in a different way. We could be using electricity and energy in completely different ways. And we're sort of on the cusp of this. You know, sure, we've got sites with the solar panels, we've got energy savings ideas, but these technologies, for example, if you had a reliable battery storage technology, could we call in those batteries when we have a voltage reduction of some kind and prevent the elevators from going down? I don't know if you could, but that is the kind of technologies that are potentially available to us. And again,
I'm on it right now.
Yeah.
I'm writing it down.
Yeah. And again, I mean, for the folks that are listening, this is a chance, this is generational learning.
Yeah.
Because I didn't grow up with any of this stuff. This was all in a science fiction book. So, and now for our families and families that are interested, there's a generational change coming on how we use energy, what technologies control it. I think the electrification of the buildings, where we go to an electric model, is going to make high demands, but it's possible in a lot of locations. I think that involves thinking about how the electricity is used to sort of generate heat and hot water. And we're experimenting with heat pumps, which would give the individual apartment more control over their heat than they've ever had, you know. And so these are all things that I really encourage folks to keep your eyes and ears, because as we march out and try things, some of these technologies are going to stick.
Yeah.
And once they stick, we're going to invest in them. And then that means an opportunity for someone to either learn that craft or help maintain.
That's incredible. Is there an openness to pilots and things of that nature?
Yes, very much so, because we're doing a pilot to reclad one of our buildings to see how that makes a difference in the energy. We're doing a pilot on the heat pump idea. We have some partners there. We don't have anything out of the sort of prototype stage. And we're going to be doing, I think, pilot ideas around heat and hot water technologies that are different now than what we have. We have basically what we have in a lot of our properties is the same technology to heat hot water that the steam engine used.
Oh, wow.
Those boilers are that old. And so I'm not saying they've functioned all these years and we have a great group of people who keep them moving. But, you know, in another 10 years, there needs to be a different technology if we're going to have reliability.
Absolutely. But I mean, the buildings are built like tanks.
Yes,
I mean,
that's a fact.
So it's incredible that any heat or any coolness can actually happen. But you guys have done a great job of at least making sure people can be, you know, comfortable. But you're right, technology moves us forward, and we should embrace it when we can. So now that we have had this great conversation, I've learned a lot just listening to you. When you look at your whole team, all of NYCHA, all the way down to tenant leaders, etc., collectively, when you look at it and go, here's a measure of success, what would that be?
I think on the capital investment, it's how many buildings have we comprehensively modernized and really changed that building fundamentally. Yeah. But there's another part of this, and to me, it's a basic service question. Right now, we struggle with basic services. And I'm talking about things like the grounds, hallways, and that kind of thing. If we can start to reach that, hallways are clean, grounds are picked up, trash, that's equally important. In fact, that's what the residents feel the impact every day. When that doesn't happen, when it happens well, then you can come out of your apartment and say, oh, wow, the trash is picked up. And, you know, that's a measure of success for myself, that can we see that? And that's part of the reorganization work that we're doing to restructure NYCHA from the inside. And that'll mean things like work order reform, different structures at the property level, and supporting the property so they can do those basic services and make that real for people.
That's awesome. I mean,
and applaud all of you for your incredible commitment. As I envision the future for all New Yorkers where we have access to be connected, I believe we have to be creative and innovative in our approach to get families connected to the internet with the latest and updated technology and making sure that they have access to broadband. It is truly life-changing and the opportunity to create the economic prosperity that so many families desperately need when they are connected to the internet. It is a world of information, of technology that many families are not typically used to. I also think we have to make sure that we are training our next generation of young leaders by having partnerships with colleges, CUNY, as well as our local high schools so that we can train up the next generation of young leaders. I want to thank all of you for the work you do every day to address internet access and broadband and connectivity and technology. We know that the tech industry is booming and will really create the pipeline that so many families need to the middle class. Congratulations again to Clayton Banks and the team at Silicon Harlem for all of your work and to all of you who are participating in this great event today. Remember, we all do better when we are all connected. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for this summit, and I look forward to working with all of you on behalf of the Bronx and the city of New York and all New Yorkers. Stay connected. God bless.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gibson.
Thank you very much to Silicon Harlem, and I will say a couple of things and then I'll have the honor of introducing my friend who's going to be receiving this award. I think I can say over and over again how much I love the work that Clayton Banks is doing. It goes back many years when Silicon Harlem actually started, but I also want to say when you have been part of Harlem Week and dealt with both the young people, supporting them and supporting those who are seniors, and then also the work we did with Harlem and all the pitches. There's a long history here, and just congratulations on many fronts. And I know now you are working in some of the NYCHA developments, which is as important as it gets. So beyond connected is a great thing. There are a couple of ways that I hope we're supplementing or complementing what you're doing. I think first of all, working with Damani Williams, the public advocate, we've been hosting these, what we call People's Tech Assemblies, because as much as we think we know about technology, it's still not the type of dialogue that goes on in the community. So working with the public advocate's office, we have been doing these. They all go through till, we've done a couple of them, they go through till November 14th. You can just contact our office, we'll put it in the chat, or the public advocate's office. And what it is, you kind of say, what's the purpose of all this? Well, I think there's three. Number one, despite the work that James Paul Farmer has been doing and the mayor's office and the CTO and the CIO, I never know what they're called, I think people still need to have some roadmap as to what people feel that technology can be helpful in terms of their lives. And I think one example is when we come up with policies, this happens to me quite a bit now. And you can have a new policy on housing, you can have a new policy on health, you can have a new policy on anything. And the issue is we always, particularly if there's government intervention, there's always something called an environmental impact statement. How does this particular policy impact the environment? And in fact, when you pass a bill, there's also a financial impact statement. I guess it's called an FIS. But what I think is missing is any kind of a technology impact statement. What is it that the technology could improve? Or how is the technology going to be perhaps not an improvement in how this policy is implemented? And then the second issue of all this, where technology can be helpful, is transparency. I would focus on the budget because that's what I'm most interested in. And I've been pushing for units of appropriation. Often you'll see a budget item, I don't know, $10 million, Department for Homeless Services. Other is the category. Well, that's not what makes sense. Nobody in the neighborhood could ever know how that lump sum is impacting them. So if we had, using technology, using it to be more transparent on the budget process. Because people want it, they don't really care. What is it that a budget is doing, with all due respect, to Brooklyn or the Bronx? I want to know in Manhattan, breaking it down really specifically by neighborhoods. What is the sanitation service for East Harlem compared to East Side? What is the homeless support for East Harlem versus Central Harlem? These are the questions I get all the time. Very hard to get that transparency. That's where technology could step in. So those are two specific examples. And when we send you the information in the chat, if you want to participate in that, let us know. I want to thank Cornell, because they have come out with a wonderful survey and report on what we are talking about. And they're working with us in terms of the Public Advocate's Office and this roadmap, basically how technology can interact with the communities. That's what I think these discussions are doing. Number two, I think all of you know that Beta NYC is a nonprofit. Noel Hidalgo heads it up. Emily Goldman helps them. And they take, I don't know, 10 to 15, this is something that we started, CUNY students, undergrads, every year to help them understand the open data platform. That's the open data law that I passed many years ago when I was in the city council. And it's come a long way, but mostly working with the community boards to come up with how the community can make that open data relevant to them. Easier said than done. I thought it was going to be easier. It's not. So Beta NYC has, you know, teaches the students, and then the students go work with the community boards, just everything from board stat, how to work Socrata, even something simple about how to work on Excel, Cardo, how to use the GIS, and all of the ways in which the city data bases can be used to help them understand their community. Recently, for instance, we did a thing on food deserts. We've done another report on the 196 religious facilities in Manhattan, because God forbid they would be torn down. That's really, really a challenge. What's landmark and what's not. I'm just giving you some overall projects that they've done. And of course, figuring out all of the boundary maps. You've got police, sanitation, community board, poverty board. I could go on. There are all these overlapping maps. Where are they and what are they? Those are some examples. And of course, I have to say and an aside that these students have gone on to amazing jobs in the tech world. Another example, every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, we've been doing it for about 5 months. You're welcome to join us. Everybody has either discussion, this is 3 o'clock every Tuesday on Zoom. You can just sign up on our office. We'll tell you how to do that in the chat. Somebody can come talk about vaccinations, which I wish we could stop talking about, but it never changes. Always something new, not always good, sometimes better, sometimes worse. It's a new variant, by the way, in the UK, which is even more challenging than what we have now. And where is the money? Money is coming from the federal government. It's going to the DOE. It's going to different places, hopefully for infrastructure. Where is it going and what's it being used for? Easier said than done. So one of the examples is all during the pandemic, much thanks to Clayton, some of the seniors and families got devices. But guess what? The device doesn't last forever. DOE still needs the device. Seniors still need the device. And during the pandemic, NYCHA got 17,000, God help us, devices for seniors. Those that were given by Silicon Harlem were used appropriately, but I don't know what happened to the 17,000. So now the city is giving them, thank goodness, to the senior center so they can track them and not have them just go out. That's another example where technology can be helpful, but it is interesting because in one center, 325 devices were available. But guess what? Out of 325, people could have devices. That's the number at this particular senior center. 174 tablets were given out if the senior center wanted them, but only 100 seniors were interested because they're still nervous about using technology. So it's a very interesting statistic. I want to also mention another problem, because in other words, even though we might have the devices, we still have a lack of interest. The demand for technology has to increase. That's another thing we hope to come out of the public advocate, Manhattan Borough President interest, because people don't see what it can accomplish. And that's another demand issue that has not been successfully addressed. I also want to mention, we managed to get in Washington Square Park, we hope to do it elsewhere, about 7 substance abuse programs, working with Greenwich House, which is a nonprofit settlement house, working with the Parks Department, working with NYPD, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day. This was my suggestion. And the idea is get people help, because there are a whole bunch of people in the park abusing drugs. And there are a whole bunch of drug dealers who are helping them to do that bad thing. So long story short, we thought, okay, so now we'll figure out how they can all coordinate using an app. And these are folks who are sometimes used to using technology and sometimes just answering the phone, doing some email. It's not working extremely well. And some of the providers want to go back to paper. So like I said, we're still not either between the type of device, the quality of the internet, and the lack of demand. There's still a real challenge, like how can technology really help us? And I think that's something we need to address. But what the real issue for today is to allocate to my friend, Assemblymember Inez Dickens, the Charles Rangel Technology Award. And the reason this is, there's so many ways that this is special. It's the Silicon Harlem Next Generation Technology Summit every single year. And every single year, Silicon Harlem presents this award, the Charles Rangel Innovative Person Award. I was very, very honored to get it last year. And I'm really, really honored to be able to give it to my friend, Assemblymember Inez Dickens. She is somebody, first of all, she supports Silicon Harlem. I think that should be said at the outset in every way, shape, or form. And she is somebody who makes a huge difference in our community. She also understands the importance of innovation and technology. And the fact that she is the closest person in the world to Congressman Charles Rangel, perhaps except for his wife, Alma, and his family. She is his right and left hand, and they're very, very close friends. So I think in particular, it's an honor to give this award to her and very, very meaningful. So I'm now presenting virtually this award to my friend, Inez Dickens, for whom I have great respect and friendship. And we have served together in the city council, and we can whisper in each other's ear and finish each other's sentences. Congratulations, Assemblywoman Inez Dickens.
Thank you so much, Gail. Thank you so much, my President. It is such an honor for me to receive this award from Silicon Harlem. Yes, I have been involved with them from the onset. From the very beginning, it came to me with this idea that I thought was great. They also went to Congressman Rangel, who also thought this was a wonderful and innovative and necessary, because Harlem needed to be brought into the 21st century. It is just crucial that we bring this community with the businesses and the families and the children, our future, into the technology world on all levels, be it repair or being a tech, being an educator. And it's crucial because during this pandemic, we saw how remote learning in our schools did not really work. And that's because the kids were not used to being able to use the computer system, nor were the teachers. And yet when you travel to other parts of the world, you find that they were already using remote learning on different levels. But here in America, in New York, we were not. And for the longest time, it did not work. It failed in our communities. And to be honest, it still isn't working at its peak. And that's because we really aren't aware. We don't know how to use the technology. Gail has been a fantastic supporter of Silicon Harlem. She's been a supporter of mine. We worked together in the city council for years, phenomenally. And she has been a proponent of computerization technology in schools. And we see that during the pandemic, remote learning did not work. And that's because the teachers themselves were not attuned and were not used to using computerization for education, nor were the children, nor were the parents. So Silicon Harlem has stepped up to try to fill that void over the years, and they have grown phenomenally from the time they first came to Congressman Rangel and myself, when Clayton showed up at the door talking about Silicon Harlem, and we both were so impressed with them and what they had to say and their dedication and seeing to it that our small businesses and our future, our children, would be educated in technology, because that is the way of the world. And we were in a horse and carriage in the 21st century as far as computerization was, technology. And they have worked and dedicated their lives to see to it that this village has been brought into, is being brought into the 21st century. And I am so grateful. They deserve the awards, not I, but I accept it on behalf of my village of Harlem for what you have given, your dedication, your lives, your commitment, your promises that we would work together. And by the way, I was working with Clayton for the fire watchtower in the Marcus Garvey Park, that because that's the highest point in Manhattan, I don't know if everybody realizes it's the highest point in Manhattan, that they would be able to use that as again, like it was used years ago, a notification of fire for the last 2 centuries. But the fact is that now it can be used for technology to notify the city of New York about any impending disaster. I want to thank Silicon Harlem. I'm so grateful to you. It's been just a phenomenal ride upwards for the community, the small businesses, the education, the tutorials, the gifts that you have given to us. God bless, stay safe, and thank you.
Well, the thank you is really from us to you. And I will say this to everyone who may or may not know, but no one's been more dedicated to Upper Manhattan that I know of than Inez Dickens. Not only it's a legacy in her own family. Nobody can talk nothing to them. I mean, they know Harlem better than anybody.